I have bought a Baofeng UVK6. I like to know if this handheld is meeting the regulations, and if not, I want to understand why. Welcome to my channel. Let's measure the output and tear down this handy. The Baofeng that I use for this video is new and is coming straight out of the box. I paid only 14 euros on AliExpress, and it's a complete unit with USB-C, battery and a charger. Let me unpack this cheap handheld, connect the antenna and battery to see if the handheld is functioning as it should. To compare the output of the Baofeng with other handhelds, I also have a new Quansheng. I will use this handheld in another video, so I will not take this apart in this video. And I use my Yaesu FT60 to look at the output and compare this with the Chinese ones. So let's start measuring, and I don't know about you, but I am curious. All measurements are performed in the same way. I use the conducted method as described in the ETSI EN 301783. The handheld is directly connected via a 40 dB attenuator to my spectrum analyzer to visualize the output. When you scroll down in the ETSI standard for commercial available amateur radio equipment to page 14, you find the details where a transmitter has to comply to. This is -70 dBc, where C is the main carrier, or we need formula -43 plus 10 log PEP. Whichever is higher counts. I made a simple example. But first, for the people who are not used to work with decibels, I made a small table which helps you to understand dBm. 0 dBm is 1 milliwatt, 10 dBm is 10 milliwatt, and so on. 20 dBm is 100 milliwatt, 30 dBm is 1000 milliwatt, which is 1 watt, 40 dBm is 10,000 milliwatt, which is 10 watt. dBc is the difference between two signals where the reference is the carrier. So where the ETSI says -70 dBc, it means that the harmonics must be 70 dB lower than the carrier signal. Now the example with 1 watt. 10 log 1 is 0, so 43 plus 0 is still 43. With a minus in front of it, it's -43 dBm. 1 watt is 30 dBm, -70 dBc is -40 dBm. The -43 dBm counts. What happens if we use an example with 10 watts? 10 times log 10 is 10 added with the 43, we get -53 dBm. If you use the -70 dBc, we get 40 dBm for the 10 watts, -70 dBc gives -30 dBm. So the -53 dBm is the limit. Now time for some measurements. And wow, this is not what you want to see. I see 4 signals where only the first one is the wanted carrier. Here are the results in more detail. And remember, the unwanted harmonics are not allowed to exceed the -43 dBm as in our example. The first harmonic is 32 dBm on 145 MHz, which is exactly corresponding with 1 watt. But the second harmonic is 15 dBm the third 0 and the fourth is even minus 2.25 dBm. This Baofeng does absolutely not meet the requirements as described in the ETSI. Now let's have a look what this handheld does on 70 centimeters. And that is much better, and it might be within the measuring fault, which is plus or minus 4 dBm. Even the third harmonic is visible, but that can also be within the measuring fault. Now compare this with what I heard is the flagship of the handhelds, the Quancheng UVK99. Yeah, what can I say? On 2 meters the harmonics are minus 10, minus 16 and minus 70 dBm. This handheld, even with my measuring error, let's say it's 6 dBm, does not meet the ETSI requirement. It's not even close. But what does a Yaesu do? This is why you pay more money. This handheld does not show any harmonics except the carrier. Even with the focus on the second harmonic, nothing shows up on the spectrum analyzer. Now the fun begins. Looking inside the Baofeng, and apparently getting the battery out is the most difficult part. Remove the antenna and the knob. There are no bolts or screws. I don't want to damage the case, that is why I use a plastic spodger as pry tool. Put it in between the metal plate and the casing and pry the metal plate out. Now you can remove the assembly from the casing. Be careful with the wires of the speaker. This is the plastic which is sitting on the external speaker and the microphone plugs. Don't lose it. I remove the speaker wires so I can put the front case aside. Next step is to remove the screws to get a visual on the other side of the PCB. If you think I have all the screws, no, there is one hidden under the LCD screen. Don't pull the flex cable out of the connector, but slide the clamp out first. Don't damage the cable, it's very fragile. Now all the screws are out, remove or loosen the bolts on the SMA of the antenna and the potentiometer. The SMA is glued with this green stuff. Remove this first. It's sticky stuff and it's very easy to remove. And finally I'm in. Look at this nice PCB. Let's see what's on it. At the bottom of the board we find the secret CPU and a memory chip. But also something I didn't expect here, a 5807M FM tuner. Here the heart of this handheld, the It Does It All receive and transmit chip. This is a dual op-amp for the microphone input. This is the speaker amplifier. And here are the MOSFETs for the VHF and UHF output. What I do hate on any PCB is soldering residues. On this board you find soldering balls, a leftover from soldering with solder paste. Because it's very easy that they cause shorts, I remove them, even if I don't have to. But cleaning the board is adding extra cost to the production, so they just don't do it. For the viewers who want to know how the VHF signal and the UHF signal is switching between the two paths it can choose, if you look in the circle you see two pin diodes. They are pointing to each other. The cathodes are connected where the RF signal comes from the radio chip. Now by supplying a bias voltage to the anode, the diode starts conducting and the RF signal is now passing from cathode to anode. It's actually a very small clever switch. And these are not the only two pin diodes. The whole board is full of this kind of switches. We know now approximately how this PCB works. So let's do some real measurements, to start with the VHF filter. I connected the input of the filter to the tracking generator and the output of the filter to the input of the spectrum analyzer. Here is the characteristics of the filter in more detail. It is clearly a low pass filter. Here you find the 145 MHz signal. The 290 MHz signal is about here and the fourth harmonic is about here. So it's very clear why these harmonics get through. I did the same for 70 cm. And here you see that it is a bandpass filter and the marker is at 667 MHz. The second harmonic is outside the filter. And that's why the output of this second harmonic is probably inside the tolerance. Now I have done the measurements, I remove the wires and the extra solder. A bit of flux and I remove the solder with solder wick. And as you can see, this is a massive ground plane. You have to put a lot of heat into it to get the solder melting. Yeah, forget it. I need my other soldering station. And of course I have to clean up also. Did you see it? Somewhere in the process I knocked off a resistor. I found it back on the coax wire I used for the tracking generator. It is very small, that's why I'm using a microscope for this work. Before I put the PCB back in the metal casing, I test if the handheld is functioning as expected. Everything is working again and I can put the PCB back in the metal case, which you see at 8 times the actual speed. To lock the SMA nut I don't use a glue but solder mask. This will hold the nut in place and it is also very easy to remove if necessary. You only need a little bit of the solder mask, that is why I apply it with the tip of my tweezers. To harden the solder mask you need to apply UV light. Before I connect the speaker again, I remove the old solder with some solder wick. Always clean up after soldering. Flux will dry out and sometimes get conductive. I use 99.9% isopropanol alcohol.
dit.
Now everything is connected again, I can put the Baofeng together. And don't forget this plastic cover. Damn, the screen is dirty on the inside. I have to clean this. For 14 euros you get the quality you asked for. It's a very nice handheld, but it does not meet the regulations if transmitting. Maybe in another video I'll try to improve the filter. But this is enough for right now. Last few things and the Baofeng is completely reassembled and working as from factory. Thank you for watching.